completely talking about something else. So, and for the ones that have been here long enough, unfortunately, they kind of know that, and so they'll either catch me and say, hey, Darren, you're saying this, do you mean this? So if I start doing that in the middle of class, or if I start going off on a tangent, wave your hand and kind of point, do something and say, hey, Darren, you're kind of going off on a tangent again. Because, well, I do need that. But anyway, speaking about, though, being back here, how are you doing? Nice to see you. Speaking of being back here, I am not clicking. There we go. I am ready for this Saturday. I don't know how many people, do we have anybody, if you are a big football fan, go ahead and raise your hand. I have been waiting for this specific Saturday now for quite some time. We really didn't get to have the normal opening of the season last year, and so I've been really looking forward to this following Saturday coming up. Glenn and I have a couple of traditions that I always do during this week. One is I wear one of my Alabama polos every day coming up, and then Friday I kind of like reveal this year's polo, because that's just, I am that dorky. So I love being able to go through the year, and I weed out the ones that weren't that successful of a year, and then I don't wear that polo again. So, but the ones where it's been a really good year, I will wear that polo, and then I'll have the new one for like 2022, and that's what I'm going to wear on Friday. And then my son and I started, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago on Thursday nights, this coming, so tomorrow night, we'll get home and get ready to watch the Thursday night game. I don't care who it is, and it's usually two teams that are horrible, but I don't care because it's college football, and I'm able to sit down and watch it again. And so Glenn and I, much to the dismay of my vegetarian wife, will have chili dogs, and we will sit there and eat chili dogs to our heart's content, usually have like French fries or some tater tots, and we will sit there and watch football and eat chili dogs, and that is my that is my preparation. That is my mode, getting ready for game week coming up on Saturday. And so I kind of have this pre-game thing that I always like to do. But do we have anybody in here that's a part of a team that's an elite team, maybe a part of a team on the school? Do we have anybody playing elite volleyball, doing anything like that? Really? All right. Well, then I'm going to share with you something that I used to do. I played basketball in high school, and I was a decent high school basketball player. I could have played college, but it had been like, college, Little Sisters of the Poor, where they just allowed me to kind of walk out on the team, and I could have been out there 4. I probably never would have played a game. But I love playing basketball, and I had like my pregame warm-up. That pregame where you're sitting there and you got the music that you're listening to, or maybe there's a movie that you watch. For us, it was Hoosiers, and I would watch Hoosiers before every basketball game because that was the movie that kind of got me going. If you don't know what Hoosiers is, go home and watch it, specifically if you're a basketball fan. But I would watch that movie, and then I would play certain songs, and it was what I would do to kind of get ready for my game. And I absolutely love it. And I had that pregame ritual that I would do almost every time. Do we have anybody that's would consider themselves super studious? Because no, but that has like a test or something that they do to get themselves ready to be able to take a test. Thank you for somebody nodding their head. What do you do? Now you have to talk to me though. Are you serious?
Yeah.
You do this in your dorm, or do you stand up next to your desk and say, hold on, teacher, let me get Subway?
I'm not even kidding, all COVID online tests, I'd do 25 and then sit down and take a test.
Excellent. Cool. 25 jumping jacks before a test. I have never heard of that one, but all right. Anybody else? Anybody else? Yeah, dude, that's good to see you. How's everything going?
Eat Skittles.
Do what?
Eat Skittles.
Eat Skittles. Like a bag or? Okay, all right. Is there a particular color, or you just sit down and just start munching the bag? Okay, so we got eating Skittles. Anything else? Anybody else? Do what? Chew gum. Specific flavor or? No, okay. All right, guys. The reason I'm kind of asking this is I want somebody to turn the Bibles to Joshua chapter 3. Joshua chapter 3. By the way, what are we talking about? What's the class topic? Ephesians. Yeah, we're going to get to Ephesians here in just a moment. If you will, go to Joshua chapter 3. And I need somebody to read for me Joshua chapter 3, verse 5. And be loud. Go.
Then Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you.
Okay, Joshua was talking to the children of Israel, and he specifically told them to consecrate themselves. Now, before we go a little bit further, I need to give you a background of where we are and what's getting ready to happen. The children of Israel are getting ready to cross over the Jordan River, and they're going to start conquering Canaan. I mean, this is the moment. This is the moment that they have been getting for. In fact, we've got to go all the way back to Abraham and in Genesis chapter 12. So we're back to Genesis chapter 12, skipping over Deuteronomy, skipping over Numbers, Leviticus, Exodus, Genesis, 12th chapter of the Bible. And we're in Genesis chapter 12, where he is giving Abraham his blessings. And he's telling Abraham, I'm going to make your name great. I'm going to take you to a land, and through your seed, all the descendants of the world are going to be blessed. And so he had promised him that he was going to have that blessing. And we've now gone through Abraham. We've gone through Isaac. We've gone through Jacob. We've gone through Joseph. And we've gone through 400 years of slavery and 40 years in the wilderness. And they're getting ready to cross over into the Jordan River. And before we do that, what does consecrate mean? Do what? To make holy. To make holy. I went through the Webster Dictionary, and it was talking about to induct a person into a permanent office with a religious site. Specifically, it was talking about how how to ordain the office of a bishop. It was taught to make or declare sacred, just like Timmy was talking about. Specifically, because I don't like saying the other word because it doesn't roll well off of my tongue, to devote to the worship of God by a solemn ceremony, and also to devote to a purpose or as if with deep solemnity or dedication. So what does it mean specifically to consecrate ourselves? What does it mean to consecrate ourselves? We're going to start calling names, guys. All right, Caroline, how are you? Nice to see you. What does it mean to consecrate ourselves? And you're next, because you've been gone way too long.
When I'm thinking of it, I think of more of like focusing my life in the moment, like I'm preparing myself, like I don't know how to describe it. Just like focusing myself.
Focusing yourself. All right, somebody over here. Okay.
I think of like a reset. Like it's like reset yourself. Like get yourself to like a pure standard, like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like reset. Like,
Okay. All right, spiritually reset. Don't say hand up over here, Ramon.
So back then it means you wash your clothes and you abstain from any, if you were married, for any intimacy. So because you are going to be holy, dedicated to something special.
Okay, excellent. So he's telling them, I want you to consecrate yourselves because for tomorrow, God is going to work. What was he read this for me? Captain, you still got that up? It says, for tomorrow, God is going to He's going to do amazing things among you. Now, again, they're getting ready to cross over into the land of Canaan, getting ready to cross over the Jordan River. I want you to think about the things that they've seen. They went through, and I was talking about this with my son, and whenever we think about a miracle from God, we hear a between. Like something's getting ready to happen, and between, there it happens. And so forgive me with that, but, so we've got the 10 plagues, and between, and all these plagues are happening to the Egyptians, culminating in the death of the firstborn. And so the children of Israel, they got to see all of that. And then with the next one, they had the parting of the between, and the Red Sea parts. And they get to see again that miracle where they're parting through, going through on dry land as they're walking across, they're walking through the Red Sea. And then another between, they get water coming from the rock. And then finally, and the ground opens up when there's a rebellion with the sons of Korah in Numbers chapter 16, and they open up to the point that it's the sons of Korah, and opens up under those who were rebelling, and everybody else is saved. And they have seen all of these incredible things. This is the moment that they have been waiting for like 600 years. They've been going to bed at night, telling their children the stories of Abraham and the blessings and the promises that were made to Abraham, and to be able to say, one day this is going to happen. And like that day is tomorrow. I mean, it's here. So the question, though, is this is something they've been waiting for centuries. So why do they have to consecrate themselves? Why do they have to consecrate themselves? If this is something they've been waiting for lifetimes, why do they have to consecrate themselves? So if you will, go to Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 1, verses 15 through 23. I need somebody to read for me again with a loud voice, verses 15 through 23.
I'm going to give it to the mic.
Okay. Who's going to do that for me? Thank you, Virginia. It's nice to have you back.
Okay. For this reason, because I have heard of your faith in the Lord Jesus and your love toward all the saints, I do not cease to give thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers, that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give you the spirit of wisdom and of revelation in the knowledge of him, having the eyes of your hearts enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints, and what is the immeasurable greatness of his power toward us who believe, according to the working of his great might, that he worked in Christ when he raised him from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly places, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion, and above every name that is named, not only in the age but also in the one to come. And he put all things under his feet and gave him as head over all things to the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all in all.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so when we're talking about here in Ephesians 8:1, we get in that very first verse, in verse 15, where it talks about that Paul mentions there that I have heard of your faith. And I wasn't here last week, and I apologize if I'm recapping too much, but I do need you to understand that Paul is addressing people that he's never met before. If you look over in Acts chapter 19, you don't have to turn there because we're not going to be reading anything. Well, actually, I may read something in a moment. But in Acts chapter 19, this is where Paul is visiting and working for the first time with the people in Ephesus. And so this is the time frame where Paul is where Paul is instituting the church there in Ephesus. And it was from that time to this that Paul is now writing this letter because the church has continued to grow. And he's simply saying to them, guys, I have heard of your faith. Which means that there have been letters, there have been things getting back to Paul talking about the people in Ephesus as they are continuing to grow. I think it is very important for us to understand that Paul was addressing new Christians. He was addressing the entire church there, but specifically talking with this very first part. He's talking about the faith of not only old Christians and the people that he had first worked with, he's also talking about the faith of other new Christians there that he's never met. I think it's very important for us as we're getting to going on through the rest of the chapter. Oh, hey, yeah, Acts 19. But then he also says, for this reason. And that kind of begs to differ, like whenever you're reading the Bible and you see the phrase, therefore, you gotta go backwards and figure out why that's there. And so, as a reminder, what Donnie talked about last week is that for this reason, I have heard of your faith. And Donnie recapped last week all of the things that we can read about in Ephesians 1, verses 4 through 14. And he's talking about the fact that the children, that the people are there, that they are blessed by God. And he goes through all of these things that we are given there through that chapter where we have been blessed by God. We have been chosen. We have been predestined and redeemed. And guys, and Paul gives this same message. If you look in Romans chapter 8, if you look in Galatians, and you look at some of the other letters Paul wrote, he was very specific when he was talking to the churches, letting him know, guys, God did this for you. He chose you. He predestined you. He redeemed everything for you, and he made you heirs to his kingdom. And he is talking again to new Christians, to old Christians, to people that may not even believe yet, but Paul is reaching out and talking to them. And that is very, very important. But even after Paul reminds all of the people that he's writing to about these things that God has done for them, then he comes in and he says, there we go. He says, but he starts to pray. And Paul prays specifically for them. And guys, this is very impactful. Because again, why is Paul, after he's sitting there and he's talking to them, Paul says, I'm going to pray specifically for three things. And he talks about the fact that I'm going to pray that you come to know God. In verse 15 and in verse 16, he talks about the fact that you're going to come to know his hope. But then in verse 17, he goes further and says that you come to know his power. And we're going to stay right here for the next little bit because these are the things I really wanted to talk to you about tonight. Oopsie. And but he prays specifically that you come to know God. Now, backing up, boop, 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 boop. Looking at all of these things, Paul already told them all of these wonderful things that God has done. Excuse me, that God has done for them. Talks about the fact that God chose you. And there may be people that are here in this audience tonight. I do not know everybody's background, but you may have a feeling going on inside you that there's no way God chose me. And specifically, God is reaching out to you to say, yes, absolutely, I chose you. I predestined a place for you. I've got a home that is ready for you. And then because of me, because of my son, you've been redeemed. Which means it doesn't matter what you did yesterday, last week, last month, whatever you've done in your life, you have been saved through the blood of Christ. And it is because of that that I've got this place for you where you're going to be an heir with my son, meaning you get to come and be with us in heaven. And Paul has already addressed all of that with them. But then he says, I pray that you come to know God. Now, why does Paul have to pray that they come to know God if they've already been told all these wonderful blessings that God's given them? What's the difference between hearing something and knowing it? What's the difference between hearing and knowing? And the phone falls right in the middle of a dramatic point. I've been married for, how long, 22 years? Something like that. Well, Christina and I have been together since, we got married in 1998. And we've been together a long time. And I can tell you now, after 23 years, I know so much more about Christina than what I knew about her the day I married her. Did I love her back in 1998? Absolutely. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that she loves me. I know that Christina loves me because I've had the time frame with her that I have had. What Paul is doing his best to tell people here in Ephesus, new Christians, old Christians alike, I need you to know God. And I can tell you of all these blessings and all these things that he has done for you. I can tell you about how Jesus Christ came to die for us. I can tell you about the sacrifice that has been made for us. I can tell you about heaven, the place that's been prepared. And I can tell you specifically that he chose you. But it doesn't mean squat if you don't know it. And so Paul, after sitting here and preaching and talking to the people, and in this letter and telling them these are the blessings that you have, he then says and prays specifically, I pray that you come to know God. And then he goes in, I don't think those numbers are correct, I apologize. But then he goes in and he says, I want you to know his hope. Because knowing God means that you know the hope that he has for you. Do you still have your Bible there? Okay, go to, read verse 17 and 18 for me again.
That the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give you the spirit of wisdom and of revelation and the knowledge of him, having the eyes of your hearts enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints.
So Paul is sitting there, he's telling the people, not only do I need you to know God, I need you to know the hope that you have through God. And he's not talking about physical glory, he's not talking about physical riches, but he's talking about the enlightenment that we have, that no matter what's going on in our lives, no matter about COVID, no matter about hurricanes, no matter about all the other stressors and everything else that we're dealing with in our lives, you are going to have the enlightenment and the hope that comes from being my child. And he's sitting there and he's praying, guys, I hope that you have the enlightenment, that you can feel the love that comes from being a child of God. And then he takes it one more and says, I want you to know his power. And then he continues to talk about, and it's not just the power that he has to save us, because it is the exact same power. The exact same power that I use, that God used to raise his son from the dead. And my prayer for you, my hope for you, is that you're going to come to know God, that you're going to have a hope in God, and that you're going to realize that the exact same power, that exact same hope that I use to raise people from the dead, you now have as well. And God is not going to throw that at someone he does not love. He is not going to make that promise to someone that he does not care about. I.e., what he is telling the people in Ephesus, because they are dealing with racism, they are dealing with death, they are dealing with sickness, they're dealing with all of these different issues, and we're going to be getting into that as we get into the later chapters. That they are dealing specifically with some of the issues that we're dealing with today. And he's telling them, guys, because you are my children, because of all of these things that I have given you, because you've been called, because you've been redeemed, because I've got a place that is predestined for you, you've got access to my power. And he finishes up the end of this chapter saying it is this hope that I have for you, that you can continue to grow and to become children of God. That you can continue to grow, because we've got a goal of not only being able to reach out and help each other, but we've got to be able to reach out to the communities and everywhere else around us. And that is what Paul was doing his best to let the people know. And pray that they come to know this. To make that full circle coming back to to make that full circle coming back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. I didn't realize how many times I hit that button. There we go. He was talking to the children of Israel back in Joshua 3, telling the guys, get ready. Just like Paul, and just like the people in Ephesus, where they had seen, if you look in Acts chapter 12, actually if you do, I'm into Acts chapter 8, if you look in Acts chapter 19 and verses 11 and 12, somebody actually get that for me right quick. It's Acts chapter 19, verses 11 and 12, and read that for me. Go ahead, Sam.
And God was doing extraordinary miracles by the hands of Paul, so that even handkerchiefs or aprons that had touched the skin were carried away to the sick, and their diseases left them, and the evil spirits came out of them.
Okay. To draw a direct comparison of the people in Ephesus to the children of Israel, the people in Ephesus were able to grab, in the words of Glenn, grab Paul's snot rag and be cured of cancer. The miracles that were being worked through Paul were so strong and so powerful that the people in Ephesus were guarding simply for garments and tissues that Paul had discarded. And they were being cured of that. The people in Ephesus, much like the children of Israel, had seen all of these incredible things done. They have seen people cured of sickness. They had seen the lame walk. They've seen the dead rise again. And still, Paul is having to tell them, I need you to come to know God. Seeing all the miracles, seeing all the things firsthand does not necessarily mean that you're going to know God, that you're going to know His hope, and that you're going to know His power. And so that is why in Joshua 3, verse 5, he is telling the children of Israel, I know you've seen all this stuff. I need you to consecrate yourselves and get ready. I need you to prepare yourselves, prepare your heart, prepare your minds, and get ready, because tomorrow we're taking over this land. And so I went through all of that to ask you this. What are you preparing yourself for? You know, we kind of joked a little bit earlier, so some of us getting ready for tests. I like the jumping jacks, that was awesome. Eating the Skittles, whatever else. Everybody's got their game day thing. But let me ask you this. When was the last time that you prepared yourself for Sunday morning? When was the last time that you consecrated yourself, that you prepared your mind, you prepared your hearts, and you got ready to be able to walk into the building Sunday morning and worship God? When was the last time that you prepared yourself as you were getting ready to have a conversation with someone, to consecrate your heart, to dedicate your mind, to set aside what you're getting ready to do so that you can be wholly dedicated to being able to study with someone? When was the last time that you had your mindset and your heart ready so that you were able to do X and fill in the blank? Because Paul was sitting there, he's talking to the people in Ephesus, saying, guys, I need you to get your hearts right. I need you to get your minds right. I need you to be prepared. I need you to consecrate yourselves. My prayer for you in getting to know God and getting to know His hope and to getting to know His power is that you have wholly dedicated yourself to be able to receive the blessings that He talked about in verses 4 through 14. And so we're getting ready to break up here in just a few minutes into our groups. And so what I want you to, as you're getting ready to introduce yourselves, and guys, please take your time to do this. Please take the time to do this. Get to know each other. Get to know the people that are in your groups much more than, hey, how you doing? My name is Darren. I'm an Aquarius, and I've been here 10 years. Get to know a fact about someone, because what's going to happen with these groups is the more that you get to know someone, the more that you spend time with someone, then the closer you're going to be able to get with each other, but the closer you're also going to be able to get with God. And I have one other request for you. In a week and 2 days, we're going to be going to St. Pete, a good portion of us. And if there's someone new here who wants to come to St. Pete with us, talk to Donnie. We'd love to get you to come join us. But that Friday, starting that Wednesday, whenever is a good time for you, I want you to consecrate yourself. As we're getting ready to go into this retreat, as we're getting ready to spend a weekend with each other and have that time frame with each other, I want you to prepare your heart, I want you to prepare your mind, and I want you to dedicate yourself to getting to know God. Now, through that, you're going to get to know each other better. You'll get to know Donnie and I better, and some of the other groups that are going to be with us as well. But what I want you to do specifically is to prepare your heart, to prepare your minds, and to prepare yourself to get ready to know God, to know His hope, and to know His power. And guys, if we start that process, when we're getting ready to be with each other, when we're getting ready to go on a retreat with each other, when we're getting ready to worship God, where we decide, God, I am consecrating myself, I am dedicating my heart, I'm dedicating my mind to this time frame. Guys, GFC is going to blow up. Gainesville is going to blow up because they're not going to be able to contain the fact that we know God's power. It's going to be working through us. It's going to start working through you. And then it's going to start working through everyone else because we are reaching out and we're doing everything we can to be able to grow God's kingdom. Because we decided to dedicate ourselves. We decided to consecrate ourselves to be able to grow, to know God, to know His hope, and to know His power. Again, the question I want you to talk about, when you get a moment, what steps can I take to better prepare myself to know God, to know His blessings, and to know His power? That's going to be the question that I ask you to go over while we're doing our small groups. Guys, thank you so much for the participation, for everybody that read and asked questions for me. Thank you so much. Donnie, you're up.
Thanks, Terry.